Good afternoon. Today is the day that I am going to give you some guidance on the sorts of research materials that you should now be moving on to now that we are investigating a question that you're going to answer for your internal assessment. So let's begin with books, sources that you're not going to use. Textbooks, such as the one we use in class, Palmer, or any other textbook. These are not considered scholastic, academic sources. This is the textbook you use in class. Palmer is widely used. If you put it on your bibliography, trust me, it won't be good, right? Because the IA moderator will make a note of it and probably deduct points from your paper. We don't use textbooks. Now, this is another source, or sources like them, right? The Oxford History of the American West, the Oxford History of European History, the Oxford History of the entire world. You are not going to be able to read this entire volume for your internal assessment. And let's face it, you probably would only want to consider maybe 3 or 4 pages of a book like this. And in fact, when students tell me, I found a book that I want to use, but only 3 pages of it are relevant to my question, why are you using it? These sorts of books don't really give you analysis. They give you narrative and usually general summaries of history. We don't want to use these. Now, certainly, if you're still getting background information and you need, again, some concrete facts that a book like this could answer on a couple of pages, that's fine. You are not going to put this on your bibliography because when you write your final product, you won't be using this. Trust me, you won't. Now, here is another example of a book that you probably will not have time to really consume in order to answer your question in 2,200 words. This is The Struggle for the Mastery of Europe, 1848 to 1918. Your question will be more narrowly focused than a span of time this large. And let's face it, you will not be writing a response to a question that considers the struggle for mastery of all of Europe. So, this is actually, Taylor's an excellent historian, and he's written more specific pieces, more analytical pieces than this. Trust me, this is more narrative than analysis, great for some background reading, but your investigation and the analytical response to it will be very, very short on background knowledge and very, very long on analysis. So, this is a source you probably don't want to put on your bibliography. You will not find this useful when you are looking for analysis, an analytical perspective that would answer your question. We're going to put this on the don't use list. Now, let's assume that you do have your question and you are ready to focus on an analytical response to it. And let's, for example, assume your paper has something to do with Hitler. And I've read several questions that have something to do with Hitler. Of course, for our internal assessments, we are limiting our focus on Hitler to the road to global war and World War II, not his domestic policies. Alan Bullock is the expert on tyranny, and he is certainly an expert on the tyrannical dictatorship of Hitler. But again, would this entire source be useful for a narrowly focused question on Hitler's domestic policies? Probably not. a book like this would be the way to go. Hitler and the Collapse of the Weimar Republic, and this is a focus on economic policies and the collapse of the Weimar Republic. I know because I've read this. It focuses on the years between 1929 and 1933, and it presents analysis. You can read this, and that's the rule of thumb. Remember, you need to evaluate 2 sources for section 1 of your paper. So think about what is digestible and what is really a source that offers an opportunity to provide analysis to your response. You can read this, it's digestible, and it's analytical. It will give you perspective. And how do I know? Read the preface. That normally indicates to you that the historian has written an analytical piece or a thesis. If you read in the introduction that the author's intent was to write a narrative, don't use it. Read it for background information. If the author indicates analysis and would probably look like this, that's the green light. Here's another one that I read years ago in writing a paper for a class that I took, Akkadian to Cajun Transformation of a People in 1803 to 1877 by historian Brasseau. Again, this is a source that offers analysis of how Acadians became Cajuns. And it's something that I was interested in because that's my heritage. But again, this is something that offers more analysis, less narrative, and how do I know? I read the preface or the introduction to the source. Also, pay attention when you have a source like this that you know you can use. Go to the bibliography, go to the back of that book, and see if you can borrow some of the same resources that your historian used, because historians research and write in history. So maybe you can borrow some of the material, some of the sources they used in your own research. So notice how bibliographies are organized too. This is a green light. So let's review. Red light, red light, green light, green light. Now at this level, you will want to seek out journals of history. Journals of history. What do I mean by journals of history? Journals of history are periodicals where historians, and these can be teaching professors at universities, it's where they want to have their work published. It is where they formulate a thesis, they do the research, usually through a study of primary source documents. They are peer reviewed, those articles are peer reviewed, and then they are published in scholarly journals. Those are the gold standards for academic research, and you definitely want to check those out. So, Journal of World History. You would find these at a university library. I don't know about your access to JSTOR. I think ProQuest is the online search engine for scholarly journals. Ask Mr. Bukowski. He is the expert on where to find the online journal articles. But this is an example of a journal of history. And I am reading the back of this, so I'm just going to read some of the titles of the articles. The Unity and Disunity of Indian Ocean History from the Rise of Islam to 1750. Religious and cultural conversion to Islam in the 9th century, Umayyad Cordova. So that gives you a sense of how narrow some of these journal articles are. One article offers a comparative perspective on modern Japanese society that would begin around 1868. So another green light, right? These journal articles are about 15, 20 pages in length, and these will offer analysis. This is another scholarly journal, Current History. These have to do more with contemporary issues. We're stopping at 1945, but this is just another example of a scholarly journal that you would find. This is a journal of contemporary world affairs, but this is just an example of another periodical where historians, where statesmen publish their works. And here is one more, Foreign Affairs, another periodical. And I'm not certain if these are still available. We used to have these in our library at BCC. But again, this is where professors, scholars, diplomats, statesmen present articles on foreign affairs. And you may find journals like these for your topic. Again, we're stopping at around 1945 in our studies. But again, these are about 15, 20, 30 pages in length, and they offer analysis. There's usually an abstract in the table of contents, for example, in this one, Journal of World History. The first page will usually present the abstract or the summary of the historian's article. It may even include the thesis. So read the abstracts to get a clue as to whether or not the articles in the journals that you found are useful. If you read the abstract and the historian indicates that the article really isn't going to be helpful for you, then don't use that article. Again, don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, out of 20 pages, only one page is really relevant to my topic. All 20 pages should be relevant to your topic. And you're going to evaluate that source. The last thing you want to put in your source evaluation is that I used this journal article even though only one page was relevant to my question. That's what's going to happen to your score. That's what the moderator will do. If you put that sort of analysis in your source evaluation, the highest mark you will get out of 6, 2. So whatever journal article you pick, be certain that it is useful and relevant to your question from cover to cover, whether it's this, whether it's a book like this. Notice, whether it's a source like this, be certain it is something that you are going to read from cover to cover and is useful to your question. So that is a wrap up of my show and tell for useful resources in history for your internal assessment. Please ask questions if you have them. Mr. Bukowski is another very valuable resource. I have been working with him with internal assessments for a long time. So he probably is the resource to use if you want to know more about the online sites to go to. Again, I'm not certain about JSTOR. I think ProQuest does have a next level for academic research and academic journals of history. Double check with him. And I do know that they are, well, I don't say I do know. I think they might still be allowing students in the library on, if you sign up, you can go there. I'm not certain. He is the person to ask. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed my show and tell. I will see you in class on Thursday or Friday. Office hours are tomorrow or Wednesday. So please stop by if you have a question. Enjoy the rest of your day.